At my mother's birthday party, the laughter around the table froze when her words sliced through the air like a knife. Emily, you'll never be as good as your sister Rachel. She's the one who truly takes care of this family. My heart slammed against my ribs. Years of being pushed into Rachel's shadow came crashing back in that single moment. I shoved my chair back, my voice trembling but fierce. If that's the case, then let Rachel pay all the bills. I'm done. I won't send another $1. The room went dead silent. My mother's eyes widened, her hand tightening around her glass. What money? She demanded. We never received a single $1 from you. Gasps rippled through the room. Relatives stared. My sister's smirk faltered. And in that stunned silence, I knew the truth I had buried for years was about to erupt. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I never doubted that my parents loved me, but I always knew I wasn't their favorite. From the earliest days, the comparisons were constant, heavy, and unrelenting. Rachel, my older sister by 3 years, seemed to glide through life with effortless charm. She was the cheer captain, the honor student, the one neighbors fawned over when they came by for dinner. Rachel's so talented, they'd say, eyes lighting up as if she were some star plucked from the heavens. Meanwhile, I sat at the corner of the table, quiet, a book in my hands, waiting for someone to notice me. I remember one Christmas when I was 12. I had spent weeks working on a homemade gift, a wooden jewelry box I carved and painted by hand in shop class. My fingers ached, but I wrapped it carefully, my heart swelling with hope. When Rachel opened her gift, a shiny necklace from Dad, my parents clapped and beamed. When it was my turn, I handed my mom the box with trembling hands. She opened it, glanced at it briefly, and said, "That's nice, Emily, but you should spend more time helping Rachel with her routines instead of wasting hours on little projects." Her words cut deeper than any blade. I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, vowing never to show my disappointment again. At school, things weren't much different. Teachers adored Rachel. Once, during a parent-teacher conference, I overheard my homeroom teacher telling my mom, "Rachel is truly exceptional, a born leader." Then, as if remembering I existed, she added, "Emily does fine, but she's too quiet. She needs to be more like her sister." "Did you hear that, Emily?" Mom said in the car afterward. "Why can't you learn from Rachel?" I stared out the window, my hands clenched in my lap. "I'm not Rachel," I whispered. But no one heard me. The truth was, I wasn't jealous of her. She was my sister, and I loved her in my own way. But every comparison chipped away at me, brick by brick, until I felt like a ghost in my own home. Instead of trying to compete, I buried myself in books and tinkered with computers my dad had bought at a garage sale. While Rachel basked in applause on stage, I was in my room dismantling circuit boards, writing messy lines of code that somehow brought me peace. My world was quiet, but it was mine. Still, late at night, I couldn't stop asking myself, would I ever be enough? Or would I always be just Rachel's sister? High school was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where I could finally step out of her shadow. Instead, it became the stage where her spotlight only grew brighter, leaving me invisible beneath its glare. Rachel was everywhere. Cheer captain, prom committee, theater club. Her laugh echoed down the hallways, drawing people in like moths to a flame. Teachers adored her. Classmates fought to sit beside her. And me? I was the quiet girl, with her nose buried in a book or tucked away in the computer lab. The one people barely noticed until they needed help fixing their laptops. I'll never forget the spring talent show. I had spent weeks working with the science club on a project, a small robot that could follow commands and pick up objects. I was nervous, but proud. Standing backstage, clutching the controller in my sweaty palms, I overheard whispers. "Rachel's doing a dance routine. It's going to be amazing." "She's always the best." "Emily, Wait, she's even in the show? The curtain rose and Rachel danced under the bright lights, dazzling the crowd with every graceful move. The applause was thunderous, echoing in my chest as I waited in the shadows. When it was finally my turn, I stepped forward and brought my robot to life. It rolled across the stage, picked up a cup, and dropped it into a bin. The mechanics worked flawlessly, but the audience clapped politely, almost out of obligation. And when I looked toward my parents, my stomach twisted. Their seats were empty. Later that night, I found out why. Your sister had cheer practice, and we didn't want her to walk home alone, Mom explained casually, as if it were the most natural decision in the world. But it was the talent show, I whispered, my voice cracking. Don't be so dramatic, Emily, Dad muttered. We'll catch the next one. But there wasn't a next one, at least not with them in the audience. The comparisons sharpened with every report card and every holiday dinner. Look at Rachel's grades, Dad would beam. She's a natural. My grades were good, solid A's and B's, but when I showed them, Mom would sigh. If only you had her confidence. One afternoon, after yet another round of, why can't you be more like your sister? Something inside me snapped. Because I'm not Rachel! I shouted. The room fell silent. For a fleeting second, I thought they finally heard me, but then Mom shook her head, disappointment etched across her face. You don't need to yell, Emily. Just try harder. I stormed upstairs, tears burning my eyes. That night, I scribbled into my journal, no matter what I do, it will never be enough. Still, I clung to the one place that gave me solace, the glow of my computer screen. In code and circuits, there were no comparisons, no favoritism, just logic, order, and the quiet reassurance that I could create something on my own terms. Leaving for college felt like escaping a cage I hadn't realized was locked. When I was accepted into the computer engineering program at the University of Texas, for the first time in my life, I could breathe without Rachel's shadow pressing down on me. I packed my bags with trembling hands, half excited, half afraid. At the airport, Mom hugged Rachel longer than she hugged me. Take care of yourself, Emily, she said distractedly. And remember, confidence is just as important as intelligence. I nodded, thinking, no matter what, it'll never be enough for you, will it? College was brutal. Tuition, rent, books, it all piled on top of me. I worked 2 part-time jobs, one at the campus cafe and another fixing computers in the library. There were nights I collapsed into bed at 3 a.m, only to wake up at 7 for class. But in that exhaustion, I found something I'd never had before: pride. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every assignment I finished proved I could survive without anyone's applause. Meanwhile, Rachel's path unraveled. She enrolled at a small community college, but dropped out after 1 semester, claiming the classes were boring and limiting. She floated from one big idea to the next: an online boutique, managing an influencer's account, even a pyramid scheme. Each time, my parents nodded along, convinced Rachel was on the brink of greatness. One night, during a rare phone call home, Mom's voice carried its usual pride. Rachel's meeting with investors tomorrow. She might launch a new business. Isn't that exciting? I tightened my grip on the phone. That's great, Mom. By the way, I got an internship at a tech company this summer. There was a pause, then a half-hearted, that's nice, Emily. Just keep being independent, okay? Independent. The word had become code for, we don't expect much from you. I pressed forward anyway. I coded until my eyes blurred, aced my courses, and poured everything into proving, maybe not to them, but to myself, that I had worth. Rachel, meanwhile, flaunted new clothes and fancy dinners on Instagram, her captions dripping with confidence. Big moves coming soon. Watch this space. She never mentioned where the money came from, and I quietly wondered if my parents were still supporting her. One evening, after a grueling 10-hour day, I stared at her latest post. Rachel posing with a champagne glass at an upscale bar. I tossed my phone aside and whispered, "One day I'll show them. I'll show all of them." It wasn't jealousy. It was survival. Graduation day should have felt like victory. I walked across the stage in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, and for a moment, I let myself believe things would be different. My parents clapped politely, their cheers lukewarm compared to the roaring applause Rachel once commanded at cheer competitions. Still, I smiled to myself. This is my achievement. No one can take it away from me. Soon after, I landed a job as a junior software engineer at a growing tech company in Austin. The city buzzed with opportunity, and hope stirred in my chest for the first time in years. My salary wasn't huge, but it covered rent, bills, and even allowed me to save a little. Then the phone call came. "Emily," Mom said, her voice trembling. "Your dad, the doctor says he can't work anymore. His lungs, all those years in the factory." My heart twisted. "What about you, Mom?" I cut back my hours. It's hard keeping up with expenses, the bills, his medicine. I didn't hesitate. "I'll help. Don't worry about the money." And so it began. Each month, I wired sometimes $2,500 home. But Mom wasn't comfortable with online banking. "It's too complicated," she insisted. Rachel, still living nearby, offered a solution. "Just send the money to me," she said breezily. "I'll cash it out and give it to them." I hesitated. She laughed. "Come on, Em. Don't you trust your own sister?" Against the knot in my stomach, I agreed. Life in Austin became a cycle of work, bills, and sacrifice. I skipped dinners with colleagues, avoided shopping sprees, and lived on simple meals so I could send more home. Every time I hit transfer, I pictured Mom buying Dad's medicine or fixing the leaking roof. Rachel, meanwhile, seemed to flourish, her Instagram filled with designer dresses and rooftop brunches. I told myself her side hustles were finally working, but when Mom called complaining about expenses, doubt crept in. "The electricity bill is so high," she'd sigh. I'd promised to send more, whispering afterward, "As long as they're okay, that's all that matters." I didn't know then that my sacrifices were feeding a secret, one that would explode in the most humiliating way possible. Austin buzzed with opportunity, but I lived quietly. My routine was simple: work long hours, eat frugal meals, wire money home. I told myself it was worth it every time I pictured Mom holding Dad's hand at the doctor's office or picking up his prescriptions without worry. But the illusion began to crack. It started with Rachel's Instagram posts. One day, she showed off a brand new SUV with the caption, "Dreams don't work unless you do. Boss life." Another week, she uploaded photos from a champagne brunch, her wrist flashing a designer watch that cost more than my monthly rent. As I scrolled, my chest tightened. How could she afford this? I wanted to believe her ventures had finally paid off, that luck had found her at last. Still, a small, nagging voice whispered, "What if she isn't telling you everything?" One evening, I sat across from my boyfriend Daniel at a cozy cafe near my office. He watched me push a salad around my plate, lost in thought. "You're distracted again," he said gently. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then admitted, "Rachel's been different lately. Flashy clothes, expensive cars. I don't know where the money's coming from." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Emily, are you sure she's giving your parents the money you send?" The question cut deep. "Of course she is," I shot back too quickly. "She wouldn't lie about that. She knows how much it means." Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "You trust her. I get it. But trust without proof can be dangerous. Maybe you should ask your mom directly." I shook my head. I don't want to hurt them, and she's still my sister. But later that night, lying in bed, his words echoed in my mind as memories surfaced. Mom's complaints, the rising bills, the repairs I thought I'd already covered. Weeks passed. Work grew more demanding, deadlines tighter, my eyes burning from endless hours at the screen. Rachel's posts only became more extravagant. Vacations, poolside cocktails, expensive handbags. Finally, during a family video call, my unease boiled over. Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. "Your father's medicine went up again. I don't know how we'll manage." The words slipped out before I could stop them. "Didn't Rachel give you the money I sent last week?" Mom frowned. "Money? No, sweetheart. Rachel helps when she can, but it's not much. Don't worry about it." My pulse thundered in my ears. Not much. I had sent nearly $3,000 that month. "Emily?" Mom asked. "Are you still there?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, Mom, I'm here. I'll send extra next month." When the call ended, I sat in silence, Daniel's earlier warning ringing like a bell. My trust, my sacrifices, my sleepless nights, were they all funding Rachel's luxury? I wanted to confront her immediately, but fear held me back. Fear of destroying what little bond we had left. Fear of facing the truth. I told myself I'd deal with it later. Deep down, though, I knew the confrontation was inevitable. Mom's 60th birthday should have been a celebration. I spent weeks finding the perfect gift, a simple digital camera she'd once mentioned wanting for her garden. Daniel helped me wrap it in pale blue paper, and we flew back to Ohio together. I hoped this trip might finally heal years of unspoken wounds. The house smelled of vanilla cake and roasted chicken. Relatives filled the living room with laughter. Rachel floated through it all in a sequin dress, flawless and magnetic as ever. Mom greeted me with a polite hug, then turned to Rachel. "Honey, can you help me with the candles?" I swallowed the familiar sting. Daniel squeezed my hand. "It'll be okay," he whispered. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Glasses clinked, stories were shared. But as the night wore on, the same script unfolded. "You're such a good daughter, Rachel," Aunt Linda gushed. "Sending money every month to take care of your parents." Others nodded. "This family's lucky to have you," Uncle Frank added. My fork clattered against my plate. Then Mom spoke, her tone weary and sharp. "Emily, why can't you be more like your sister? Rachel takes care of us." Something inside me shattered. I pushed back my chair, the screech of wood against tile silencing the room. "If that's the case," I said, my voice trembling but sharp, "then let Rachel pay all the bills. I'm done. I won't send another dollar." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mom went pale. "What money?" she demanded. "We never received a single dollar from you." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. "Then explain this." I scrolled through the endless transfers, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, each marked for Mom and Dad. I held up the screen. The silence was suffocating. Rachel's smirk vanished. "Rachel," Uncle Frank said slowly, "what's going on?" She stammered, finally breaking. I just borrowed some. I was going to pay it back." "For years?" Dad's frail voice cut through the room. "What did you do with it?" Rachel's eyes darted. "I needed it. For debts. For appearances. I only gave you a little each month so you'd think—" Her voice cracked. "So you'd think I was the good daughter." The confession crushed the room. Mom buried her face in her hands. "Emily, I'm so sorry." Dad's eyes glistened. I was wrong. For the first time, I stood tall, no longer the girl in Rachel's shadow. The truth was out, and the praise once lavished on my sister dissolved into shame and silence. The living room, once filled with laughter, now felt like a courtroom. The string lights Rachel had hung for decoration flickered faintly, as if even they were ashamed to shine. No one moved. The only sounds were my father's uneven breathing and the quiet sniffles of my mother. Rachel sat stiffly, her hands knotted in her lap, her eyes fixed on the floor. For once, she had no story to spin, no charm to hide behind. Mom broke the silence first. Her voice trembled as she turned toward me. Emily, I was so blind. I thought Rachel was the one sacrificing for us. All those times I told you to be more like her. Her words cracked as tears spilled down her cheeks. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I swallowed hard. For years I had imagined hearing those words, but now they didn't feel like victory. They tasted like ashes. Dad leaned forward, coughing before he spoke. I owe you an apology too. I was proud of Rachel, blind to what you were doing. I never asked, I never looked, and I let you suffer because of it. His weathered face crumpled with regret. The child in me wanted to run to him, to finally feel seen. But the woman I had become knew this was the moment to draw a line. I love you both, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I always have. That's why I sent the money. But things can't go back to the way they were. If I'm going to keep helping, there have to be rules. Every eye in the room turned toward me. Even Rachel finally lifted her gaze, guilt swimming in her expression. First, I continued, no more comparisons. I'm not Rachel, and I never will be. I'm Emily. If you can't see me for who I am, I can't keep breaking myself to earn your approval. Mom nodded through her tears. Never again, sweetheart. I promise. Second, I said, drawing a slow breath, everything has to be transparent. I'll send money directly, or I'll pay the bills myself. No more middlemen. No more confusion. Dad nodded firmly. Agreed. We'll do it however you say. My chest tightened, but I went on. And third, Rachel has to take responsibility. She can't keep pretending while I carry the weight alone. Rachel flinched, shame washing over her face. When she spoke, her voice cracked. You're right. I've been selfish. I wanted to look perfect even when I was drowning. I stole from you, Em. I lied to them, to everyone. I don't expect forgiveness. But I'll change. I'll get a real job. I'll contribute for real this time. A heavy silence followed. For the first time in years, my sister looked small. Not the untouchable golden child, but a woman stripped of illusion. I exhaled slowly. Words won't fix this, Rachel. Only actions will. If you want to change, prove it. She nodded, tears spilling freely. Around us, relatives shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Linda murmured that she had judged me wrongly. Uncle Frank admitted quietly that I'd carried more than anyone realized. Their words barely registered. All I felt was exhaustion, years of swallowed pain pouring out in a single night. Daniel's hand brushed mine, steady and warm. You did what needed to be done, he whispered. And I knew he was right. This wasn't about humiliating Rachel. It was about reclaiming my worth. As the night wound down, the birthday cake sat untouched, its candles melted into waxy puddles. The celebration had become a reckoning, painful but necessary. Later, alone in my old bedroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My shoulders were straight, my eyes clear. For the first time, I didn't see Rachel's shadow staring back at me. I saw myself, Emily, no longer invisible. In the weeks that followed, the dust slowly settled. Back in Austin, work resumed, but everything felt lighter. Mom called often now, her voice softer, asking about my projects and my long hours. Dad started telling neighbors about his daughter Emily, the software engineer in Texas. His pride sounded awkward at first, but it warmed me all the same. Rachel surprised me most. She took a steady job and began sending a modest amount home each month. I'm trying, she told me once, and for the first time, I believed her. One evening, walking through a quiet park, Daniel squeezed my hand. You spoke the truth, even when it hurt. That takes courage. I smiled, leaning into him. I finally understood something simple and powerful. Family love can't survive on favoritism and lies. It heals only with honesty and respect. I was no longer just Rachel's sister. I was Emily Carter, a daughter, a sister, a woman who had fought to be seen. And finally, I was.